All right, so today we are looking at the science of periodization. This is actually some of my favorite stuff to talk about. I think it's so fun to kind of set up like a full cycle for someone. It's a lot of times when we're thinking about like what our workout's going to be, it's like your clients, it's like, oh, they're coming in today. What am I going to do? I mean, obviously, you shouldn't be building your workouts like day of, but uh but like you consider it's like, all right, they're showing up on Monday. It's like, what am I going to do with them? Like, they've got their injuries here, they got their overactive muscles here. I'm going to do this, right? You have it all like kind of planned out in your head, and then you lay it out on a workout sheet. But how do you make sure that they're getting enough training volume over the course of a week to experience growth while also making sure that you're not overtraining them? Well, that is where our understanding of periodization is really going to come in, and why setting things up very specifically is going to be so good. A lot of us are probably most familiar with your classic bro split periodization, right? The bro split, 5 days of lifting, where it is, chest day, back day, leg day, shoulder day, and then arm day, right? And I actually don't hate this. It's actually okay, but it's got a couple like problems. It's got a couple like pitfalls that it kind of runs into that we'll address today. We'll talk about like how to make it some slight adjustments there. So we're going to talk about the acute variables within the OPT model today. We are going to dive into phases, and we are going to talk about designing programs for each of them. So when we say like program design, and of course I'm going to sneeze at some point here. When we say program design, what we mean is it's a purposeful system that is going to help us achieve whatever desired goals our clients have. So my buddy Will is going to get his NASM. And so he was asking me for a little bit of advice. And I was telling him, I was like, and part of this is, we were talking on Friday about all those principles that you kind of want to follow. Like it's like all these mantras that kind of make you a better program designer. And I was like, honestly, you want to keep in mind that like being as specific as possible is what's going to get you the best results for your clients. And then you just need to find how to be as specific as possible, And so I was like, break down for me what you think the 5 most common goals are in the gym. And he said weight loss, muscle gain, athletic performance, injuries, I think is what he said. And then what was the last one he said? He had one more that was darn. Oh, and it was like just getting strong, right? That should be the easy one, right? And I was like, dude, I was like, that's great. Like without even, he has not looked at he hasn't cracked it open yet. In fact, his book hasn't shown up in the mail yet. And I was like, that's really similar to, I was like, if you give you, I asked you for 5 things, you get really similar to NASM's OPT model, where we look at like these 5 distinct phases. So I was like, if I retool the question, said, what are the 5 most common goals? Instead, what if I said, what are the 5 ways that you make an athlete? Like, what are the 5 key areas to focus on? You could very similarly say it, right? Now, he started with weight loss, and we'll leave that one alone. We'll come to that at the very end here. But I was like, he said, increase athleticism. That's the power phase of training, right? He said, increase strength. That's max strength. Get big. That's hypertrophy. And then he said, like, improve athletic. He said, lose weight and work on injuries, right? So losing weight is going to be really effective in the strength endurance phase because it's such a high number of repetitions, such a long amount of time under tension, such limited rest periods. So you just burn a ton of calories. So I would argue that strength endurance is exceptionally good for losing weight and covers that goal really well. And then finally, obviously, stabilization is very good for injuries, which is probably the real reason most people sign up for NASM instead of a lot of other programs that are out there. I've said it before, I'll continue saying it. A lot of those certifications out there are really good. I think that they give NASM a run for their money for the most part. I think the distinction that sets NASM apart is that they teach corrective exercise better than anybody else. If you want to know how to like work with any aches or pains, this is the best place to come, and it's because of all this program design stuff. So even my buddy, like he got those 5 principles that we kind of talked about on Friday. which really pair into what we get into when we look at program design here, right? It's a purposeful system. It's a specific system, right? And we're going to use two key tools here. We're going to use the OPT model and the OPT template. OPT model is that staircase that we're all, I thought that was going to be on the next slide, is that staircase that we're all very familiar with, that we've been looking at all week. Where's the resistance one? Right? Stabilization, strength, endurance, hypertrophy, max strength, and power. And then the OPT template is the workout where we plug all of that information in, right? Now, obviously, you can create your own workout template. You actually don't need to use NASMs. I don't use NASMs. I use kind of a modified version that's similar, but not quite the same. But like when you're working on, I just take the movement prep stuff out of mine and throw it into the rest of my workout because I'll usually just do like activation techniques by themselves. I find that works a little bit better. But that is, those are sort of our, NASM's going to want you to know how to use the templates. I don't teach any of that, how to do it without NASM stuff until you guys are in capstone. Like you guys are going to pretty much hear textbook explanations for everything until, you get into capstone. Then when you work with Mo's going to break a lot of rules. He's going to teach you guys like, how to break those rules. And so, I always say this, like, this is like a thing that I kind of live by. A lot of people think that like rules often stifle your creativity. It's like they find like following a set of rules is very stifling. But I think that it's actually a way for you to be very, very, very creative. Some people are all about like outside the box thinking. I think that's fine, but I think it takes sometimes a different type of creativity to work with inside the box and still do the things that you want to do, which is how, kids talk to their parents when they're getting off on a technicality. It's like John Mulaney's got a great joke where he's talking about like his parents are both lawyers. And so he's like, they would be like lawyers. And like, they're like, John, did you brush your teeth? And he's like, yes, I did. And then like his dad would get his toothbrush and be like, John, this toothbrush is bone dry. And he's like, Father, I said that I had brushed my teeth. I did not specify when or where. So if you read back the court reporter, I did not perjure myself. That's a very good example of inside the box thinking, So that's kind of like, we got all these kind of rules to follow, and it's going to help us create some really creative, very effective workouts. So today we are going to be talking a lot about acute variables, right? So acute variables are your reps, your sets, the intensity that you're choosing, like how much weight you're choosing, right? Obviously you can't, if your 1 rep max is 100 pounds, you're trying to work on 12 repetitions, you shouldn't put 100 pounds on the bar, right? Tempo is the speed, rest period, frequency. We'll talk about frequency, how often you should train each body part. Exercise selection, that's like either stabilization, strength, or power. And then duration, how long you should stay in these cycles, depending on like how many weeks you want to do something. How do they affect adaptations? How do they affect the overall program? So our definition for acute variables, right, is going to be the individual components of a workout program that determine the amount of stress placed on the body, right? We know that our body is going to respond to various types of stress, right? By ensuring that like our acute variables are laid out specifically, we're going to apply the right stress to the right people for whatever goals it is that they are trying to achieve. So that's where, like, I'm sure you've heard the very reductive, very simple thing before where people are like, well, high reps are really good for losing weight, low reps are really good for building muscle, right? And that's like, that's actually not a terribly bad explanation. It's just very unspecific. It's just very like general and simplified and kind of reductive. It's a little bit more advanced than that. First one we're going to look at are repetitions. Right now, this is the stuff I'm going to move through pretty quickly because I know you guys are kind of already familiar with some of this. But repetitions are going to be one complete movement of an exercise, right? So like when we break down like a rep, we got to consider the three, parts of it, right? We talked about the three ways that our muscles work, right? You do not just have concentric strength. A lot of people, you see it, they'll put emphasis on like the lifting, the pushing, part of like their lift, and then like they don't pause, they don't stabilize, and then they usually just drop it, and then they do the next one, they work really hard, and they just kind of drop it, right? Or like bicep curls, see it all the time. Like people are so lazy about their bicep curls. So a lot of people only put emphasis on concentric strength, but a repetition is 3 types of contractions per rep, right? So like you got to consider the concentric part, the isometric part, and the eccentric part, right? It's you start by shortening and then you lengthen, right? And sometimes, I mean, obviously, like if you're doing a squat, like your first part is actually the lengthening, which is why whenever we're labeling tempo, which we're getting to in just a second, actually, where is tempo? So that's intensity versus interval. All right, well, I'll look for that in a second. When we see like tempo and stuff, it's always listed eccentric first, which sometimes people think is kind of weird, because like if you start like a bicep curl, you're hanging the dumbbell down here, right? The first part of the lift is the concentric part. So 4, 2, 1 would be 1. You'd start with the 1 and then hold for 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. But I feel like the squat is sort of the king of working out. It's the main movement. It's like it's the main character of our workout show. And so I think because that first part of the squat is eccentric, and then there's a pause at the bottom and then concentric afterwards. That's why it always goes in that order. Like the first number always represents the eccentric portion of the lift. Second number always ever represents isometric. Third number represents concentric. At least that's what I like to say. The actual reason is not because it's named after. It's not labeled after the squat. The actual reason is because eccentric is loading, isometric is stabilizing, and concentric is unloading. And you have to load before you can unload. But I like my version better. So that's what a repetition is. It's one complete movement of an exercise. You load, you stabilize, you unload, right? You lengthen, you stabilize, and you shorten. And then eventually we have sets, which is a group of repetitions. So you can do, this is going to, be very much related to how much stress you need to put on the body. So for instance, sets is a really key aspect of determining like strength and muscle growth, particularly hypertrophy. If you're trying to like grow muscle, sets is probably one of the most important thing that you need to consider over repetitions. Like if you just work hard every set, and you do enough sets, you'll actually experience muscle growth pretty well, without getting too specific. Not as well as, again, being actually specific, but still, you'll get pretty far just by doing a lot of work. But if you do too much, we don't see any increased benefits. So then you're just putting yourself at risk for injury. And if you do get injured, then you can't work out at all, which is going to limit your growth period. So sometimes like we aren't just looking at like how much growth you can make in the short term. Sometimes it's like, well, yes, you experience a massive amount of growth at the beginning of the year, but like then you stagnated for the rest of the year, that's not great. So that's what sets are. It's a group of repetitions. So sets have an inverse relationship with your repetitions, right? So as sets go up, reps are going to come down. As reps go up, sets are going to go down. So typically, if you are doing, let's say, 3 sets of something, you're probably doing repetitions from like 12 to 20. Whereas if you are doing, let's say, 6 repetitions of something, you're probably doing repetitions of 1 to 5. And then there's going to be some blends in there. And that just makes sense considering that, like, obviously the more intense you're lifting, you're just not getting very many repetitions in. But you also can't lift for very many repetitions when you're lifting really heavy like that. So because you're lifting so heavy and you can't do very many reps, you just have to do more sets to kind of make up for it, right? So if we think of like 3 sets of 12, and then let's say like 6 sets of 5, right? 3 sets of 12 is going to be about 36 total reps, right? 12 times 3. And then we have 6 times 5, that's going to be about 30 reps. So those are both pretty close to one another. Like you get more repetitions overall. In the one version, you get like, less repetitions, but you're getting so much more intensity out of it. And that's why like powerlifting workouts are often like really, heavy on like how many sets you're doing. There's kind of a famous workout routine out there. I don't know if anybody's chime in if you've actually heard of this before. But it's called the Big But Boring program. And basically it's a really easy way to get big, but it's really boring. I'm not sure it's by Jim Wendler, but he definitely has got an article here. And it's literally where you do some type of pressing motion for 5 reps, then 3 reps, then 1 rep. So you do it's sort of a reverse pyramid, right? Where it's getting heavier. And then you do 5 sets of 10 repetitions in the other one, and then 5 sets of 10 repetitions for the next one, right? And basically, it's just these 3 movements. They're going to take you a really long time to kind of get through it. It's really boring. The original Big But Boring program was so simple. Where is it? Yeah, that's not quite it. The original, when they first kind of started trying this out, it was literally just it was 10 sets of whatever exercise you were trying to get good at. That was your dedicated thing. It was so boring. It was you're gonna go to the gym, you're gonna bench press for 10 sets, really, really heavy, with 3 to 5 minutes of rest in between each set. So you'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, rack it. I will see you in 5 minutes. And then come back 5 more. And it's that takes 5 sets of 5, 10 sets of 5 repetitions with a 5-minute rest period. That's 50 minutes of rest. So it was actually a very effective way to get big, but it was very boring. So obviously the reps are so low, the sets have to be really high. Now NASM is 10 sets is way too many for any one exercise. So usually the highest we're ever going to go is about six sets. And that's per exercise, not per week. You could always do the same exercise twice in a week. We will talk about that in a moment. So next thing we've got is intensity, right? Now, this is the amount of effort compared with your maximal intensity, right? So, this is often described as your percent 1 RM, but we've talked about intensity with cardio before as well, 65 to 75% 1 rep max, or 65 to 75% heart rate max. It would be great, man, if the freaking heart rate max numbers matched up with our lifting numbers, but it just doesn't quite work that way. But it's 65 to 75 is zone 1, 76 to 85 is zone 2, 86 to 95 is zone 3. Well, we sort of let's break that down and look at intensity in terms of lifting, right? Typically, we look at this as a percentage of our 1 rep max. If you're trying to develop endurance, you want to be able to do a lot of repetitions and a very low number of sets. Well, then you're probably going to lift anywhere from 50 to 70% of your 1 rep max. And then if you're trying to lift really heavy and try to get as strong as possible, you're going to need to lift at least 85 up to even lifting at your 1 rep max 100% intensity, right? So 85 to 100% there. And then we're going to have some blends in between each phase. So your intensity will help determine your sets and reps. I always consider intensity first when my client tells me what their goal is, and then I go backwards and do sets and reps. Because this is also part of that inverse relationship, right? So, if we see intensity, and then we got sets, and we got reps here, right? Right. And just to make this look somewhat legible, when we consider this, right, if your intensity goes up, then your reps and your sets are going to also have to go up in response, because your reps are going to go down, right? So these have this sort of inverse backwards relationship. And actually, I like to kind of put this over here just because it works really well like that. So there's sort of this inverse relationship here. You flip one of these arrows, the other two are going to flip the other direction. So bodybuilding, bodybuilders who are just trying to get as big as possible, they're honestly kind of right in the middle of all this, right? They're just trying to do as much total volume as possible to create as much cellular damage, so their body goes, holy crap, we need more cells, you know, like we need bigger stuff if you're going to keep tearing this all down. Then we got rest interval. Rest interval is the time taken to recuperate between sets. This is actually kind of related to this as well. Honestly, like when you consider that as your reps go down, as your intensity goes up, your rest period is also going to have to go up. The harder you work, the harder you're going to have to rest, you know. Olympic sprinters like Usain Bolt, when he's training for like a 100-meter dash, right, will literally take like 8 to 10 minutes sometimes between sets. He'll stay warm and do active stuff in between, but like he'll sprint and that'll be set 1. And then like 8 to 10 minutes later, he'll come to like set 2. And the thing is, the reason why is because like when you work at such a high intensity, your nervous system gets fried. It works as hard as it can and activates, you know, at maximal intensity, which leaves it exhausted, you know. And so you need a greater amount of time to recuperate between sets. Whereas, you know, we look at like, let's say we're doing a high number of reps for maybe like a low number of sets and the intensity is relatively low. Well, then my rest period can be kind of short because my intensity is so low. I'm relying more on type 1 muscle fibers than I am relying on type 2. And if you remember our physiology, type 1 muscle fibers are the red fibers that get a lot of blood flow. So they get a lot of oxygen. So they're really good at producing energy on the go. They can recover fast with minimal rest. Whereas type 2 muscle fibers recover a little bit more slowly because they don't have as much blood flow. So they're good at creating big bursts of energy and lifting really heavy, but they're not so good at like sustaining that energy for the long run. It's like jet fuel for, you know, poured into your regular engine. And then we got our volume here. Now, volume, this is kind of funny. There isn't like volume isn't necessarily laid out in the acute variables tables. Like if you guys look in your books, you'll find in the periodization chapter of this textbook or in the program design chapter of your regular textbook, this is either chapter 12 of the sports book or chapter 14 of your regular, you will find these tables. You'll find these tables here where it'll be like either the stabilization. Let me find, it's so funny. I always click this one and then that one doesn't work. There's always like, I have to like go down to these other ones to find the like high quality stabilization one. There it is. So here's your phase 1 rules, right? We've got reps, we got sets, tempo, intensity. And then we had like rest interval, right? Now this is like rest frequencies, how many times per week you should be resting, which is super not helpful. We want like this percent interval, that's our rest between sets. So it's all the way down here, right? 0 to 90 seconds of rest for most of the stuff in stabilization. Now, you might be thinking that I kind of just countered myself because it's like, I just said high repetitions generally use low rest. And it's like, why would we take 90 seconds? That's a long rest period. And that's just to have a little bit of wiggle room because this is phase 1 for beginner clients. Beginner clients just might need a little bit more rest. They're just not used to working out as much. So we do build in an extra, 30 to 60 seconds there, but try to keep your rest period. If you are doing high repetitions, low intensity like this, try to keep your rest relatively short. And then our duration, we stay in 4 to 6 weeks, and then our exercise selection. So, those are all the rules, right? That's there. And there's a different set of rules for every phase of training. Now your volume is the total amount of work that you're going to lay out. It's your sets times your reps, right? So if we think that, let's see here, I'll actually just do this in Word. I'll make a new one. We think of like stabilization, right? Strength, endurance. hypertrophy, max strength, right? So now here's our 5 phases, right? Stabilization is going to be 1 to 3 sets of 12 to 20 reps. Okay. So the maximum amount of volume here, right, is going to be either 20 and then 3 times 20 there. So 20 to 60 repetitions. That's a lot total volume, right? So that can be a ton of volume there. Now, honestly, I wouldn't recommend doing 3 sets of 20 unless you're doing very low intensity. Just because like higher intensity has been shown to be a little bit better for like strength and muscle growth. But if I really am trying to train my type 1 muscle fibers, that's great, right? That's a really good set there. Now, strength endurance is going to be 2 to 4 sets of 8 to 12 reps each. Now, when I say each, what I mean is because this is strength endurance, we're going to do this superset thing where we pair up one of our strength movements with one of our stabilization movements for the same body parts, which means you're really doubling. That means that this is really 16 to 24 when you think about it, right? So 16 is on the low run. So, if we consider like the maximal number of sets here is 4. So 4 times 16 is going to be 64, right? I'm going to put my calculator. Come over here, right? And then we've got, 24 times 4, right? That's going to be 96 reps. So 64 to 96 repetitions total volume. That is by and far the most that we're going to end up doing. And which makes a lot of sense considering that it is strength endurance, right? If you're going for endurance, you got to do a lot of work. Then we got hypertrophy, which is all about muscle growth. Now, muscle growth comes from lifting heavy and also like building up lactic acid. So we can build up lactic acid with these two. We just burn off that lactic acid because we are also breathing like crazy because we're doing, endurance training. Our cardio sort of like kicks into overdrive. Well, hypertrophy is kind of in the middle of those two things. It's like build the lactic acid, but don't switch into the aerobic metabolism because you'll burn off that lactic acid, build lactic acid, and then leave it there. So we need to do less repetitions. And then also we know we get bigger by lifting heavy and getting strong. So less repetitions pairs very well with lifting heavy. So here we are going to see where it's going to get a little bit. We're going to see 4 to 6 sets. Actually, that's the strength endurance side of things. 3 to 5 sets of 6 to 12 reps, right? So now we consider that 5 set thing times 6, that's going to be 30 to 5 times 12 is going to be 60 reps. So you can see much more training volume here than stabilization overall, which really hypertrophy is all about. As much training volume as possible to just create as much cellular damage as possible. Max strength, we're going to do 4 to 6 sets of 1 to 5 reps. So now the reps are really going to drop down. We've got 6 sets here times 5, or we got 4 sets here times 5. That's going to be 20. 6 sets times 5, that's going to be 30 reps. So our intensity has climbed so high that we are really dropping our volume down, which makes a lot of sense considering that it's maximal intensity. What are you going to do? Do 96 repetitions of like lifting as heavy as possible? That is injury town population so we definitely don't want to do that. And then for power, and by the way, if you're wondering where all these numbers are, today we're going to dive into, this big chart here. So, you know, this is going to have all your rules for you and stuff. This is a very sloppy, very fast version of this. I'm just trying to show you the inverse relationship here. Power, we're also going to do 3 to 5 sets. That's the same as hypertrophy. Now, this is going to be the superset technique. This is going to be 1 to 5 reps plus 8 to 10 reps. So what that means is it's 1 to 5 reps of a strength movement first. What's funny about power is that you're just going to keep doing max strength. You're going to do all this stuff the same here. And then you're going to superset it with an explosive movement afterwards. So now imagine doing barbell squats, but instead of like racking it and then just resting for 3 to 5 minutes, you do your barbell squats, you rack it, you immediately do 8 to 10 like squat jumps, right? We get really explosive about it. So really, you know, that's going to be at the lowest 3 sets of, let's say 5 plus 8, that's like 13. So 13 times 3, that's gonna be 39. These numbers were so clean and easier before. To 15 there times 5. 75 total. So here's what's funny, like that's a really high number, and that's because like doing 10 repetitions here, doing like the 5 repetitions here, you know, your intensity is actually relatively low for some of the power stuff. It's got the half of it's really high intensity, and then the other half is really low. If you break this down even further and you consider like this is really like 15 strength, which is lower than max strength, up to a maximum of 25. So 15 to 25 for the strength portion. But then the 8 to 10 repetition power portion, right, would be a minimum of like 24 to, you know, 50. So you're adding that on. You're adding this really light, super explosive part of it, which is very difficult, right? So this is sort of a blend of those two things together. But you'll notice, look at this, the 20 to 60, the volume gets really high here, and then it kind of drops and then it drops because the intensity is going up as you move up the OPT model, right? Like if we look at the OPT model, we start with this, you know, foundation that's pretty gentle. Then we got some intensity here, maximal intensity here, and then like maximal intensity while we're also trying to move as fast as possible here. So that is, you know, stuff that we need to consider when we're considering overall training volume, right? It's your sets times your reps. Now, one other thing to remember about training volume, we're going to see 2 things here. Now, NASM does not take a strong stance on this, but I'm going to key you in on something that is absolutely, you know, every personal trainer in the industry is talking about this. It's not in your books, but like everybody's talking about this nowadays. The overall amount of training volume that you need is about 10 to 20 sets per whatever body part it is you're trying to work on per week. Now, that's not 10 to 20 sets per exercise per week. It's 10 to 20 sets per body part. So we know 10 to 20 sets is going to be most effective, right? We also know that you don't need a full week recovery to build muscle. Now, you do need recovery. Like a big mistake that a lot of people make is they just work the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And just constantly, they never give themselves any time to grow. You know, muscles are not built in the gym. Muscles are broken in the gym and built in bed or built in the kitchen, you know, when you're resting and recovering. So a lot of times, like those are 2 mistakes that people make. They do too much or too little volume, which doesn't really result in enough growth, or they like work out too often, or they don't work out often enough. So I got 2 videos to kind of show you. And this is all under the research. If you ever want to read, if you guys want to like follow someone, you know, he's not like big on social media, but like the exercise physiologist that is sort of the king of muscle growth, and he is particularly geared towards bodybuilding. So he's like the king of bodybuilding, is this guy named Brad Schoenfeld. And then this other guy, James Krieger, who's sort of his partner and stuff. He's not a very big dude by himself. I mean, by the way, he's like, oh, that's not him. There he is. He was like a bodybuilder and stuff, like a physique competitor and all that. But like he is really he's done this amazing like meta study with this other guy, James Krieger. The two of them peeled through thousands and thousands of workout experiments and like compiled all the data and analyzed it. And he really understands training volume probably better than any other exercise physiologist out there. NASM has started using him in a lot of their materials. He's been pairing up with them. He's been on like their podcast and all this and stuff. So Dr. Brad Schoenfeld, he's the guy. He's really sort of king of it. And if you want his really great book, this book is crazy expensive, but trust me, it is excellent. Is this book right here, The Science and Development of Muscular Hypertrophy. It's pretty dense. It does not read quite as fun as even your NASM textbook does. How much is this? How much? What's this going for nowadays? Yeah, $50. Yeah, that's what I paid. I mean, 41 for Google Play, but that's the digital version, I believe. Anyway, it's a really terrific book. Expensive as heck, but I freaking love it. If you want the sort of cheaper version of that, he wrote this book called The Max Muscle Plan. This is more of a like workout plan that kind of goes through like a full 6-month cycle. It's not bad either. I peeked in that one. I didn't take the time to read the whole thing. This one also came out in 2012 before he did some of that main research. So it's good, but it's not my favorite. Anyway, he rocks. And I'm going to show you a couple of videos based on what some of his research. So there's some YouTubers that have done a really good breakdown of his work here. So it's a little bit, if you want, these giant, oh, Dion, did you trying to show something on camera? Oh, maybe not. I was like, I thought for a second, that looked like an invoice. I thought you were like, hey, I own that book. So here we go. Let's see here. Okay. So this is Jeff Nippert. He is also he's actually an exercise physiologist as well, but he's known for being a bodybuilder. But he does a really great breakdown here of that work from Brad Schoenfeld.
This is Canyon Ranch. Here, the body is challenged,
the mind awakened.
So for those of you who missed it, last week I uploaded a video on training volume and training frequency, where I laid out my current beliefs on how many sets you should do per week and how you should split those sets up. Generally, for the most part, most people are going to want to be somewhere in this range. Somewhere in between 10 sets per body part per week and 20 sets per body part per week. I know I got a healthy amount of backlash in the comment section of that video, mostly in the form of people just saying that my volume recommendations were too low. Now in the video, I drew up a rough sketch of the volume hypertrophy relationship using a graph where I showed that you can get the majority of your gains potential with just 10 weekly sets per body part, and that going up to 20 sets would get you some more gains, but they would be diminishing. And then once you get somewhere in the 20 to 30 sets per week zone, you potentially start running into overtraining issues, which could actually dampen your gains. Now first, these numbers are pulling from a systematic review and meta-analysis published in 2017 by Dr. Brad Schoenfeld, Dan Ogborn, and James Krieger, which found...
There it is, by the way. If you want to read the whole article, it's available on NCIB. But it's freaking, the title for this is so dumb. It is The Dose-Response Relationship Between Weekly Resistance Training Volume and Increase in Muscle Mass, a systematic review and meta-analysis. It is many pages. It is a long read, but if you are interested, I think it's a great, this explains, I learned as much from this as I did from years of study. So I love this article, but it is lengthy.
found that doing more than 10 sets per week showed significantly more gains, in fact, almost double the gains of doing less than 10 sets per week. Now, this data didn't exactly tell us where that upper limit is, but expert opinion, including that of the researchers themselves, told us that somewhere in the 10 to 20 sets per week zone was probably the sweet spot, and doing more than that would likely not do anything extra and could potentially cause overtraining and dampen hypertrophy. And also, these ideas coincide with MRV concepts developed by Dr. Mike Israetel.
For the average intermediate, something like 10 sets per week per body part is a minimum effective volume for a lot of people. 20 sets is not a magic number because there are no magic numbers. But like, if you're consistently doing more than 20 sets per body part per week and your progress sucks and you feel like your recovery is burdened, you got to think about probably doing less. Whereas like if you're doing 8 sets per week and you think like, oh, this isn't working, you're probably not doing too much.
But last week, some of the more astute amongst my subscribers pointed me in the direction of some new research from James Krieger, implying that maybe there is no upper limit to the amount of volume you can do, and just more is better. The more volume you can do, the more gains you'll get.
So this is one of the researchers he's talking about here, James Krieger, has come out and said, well, you know, maybe there's not an upper limit. Maybe you can do more than 20 sets per week. I don't know. It's not, I mean, honestly, like, I mean, James Krieger is also very, very smart. There hasn't been as much research on this just because that's a lot of training volume that they haven't really measured in like a lab setting. So I think there's less data, but it's like, this is like the next theory. It's like, well, maybe we go a little bit beyond that.
Rather than just speculate on this, I figured I'd cut right to the chase and get James Krieger on the line and see what the deal is. All right. Hey, James, how's it going?
Good, man, thanks.
I'm going to show you a sketch of a graph that I drew up. I'm going to actually just put it up here. So I don't know if you can see this. Here on the x-axis is volume. Somewhere here around 10 sets, I've kind of got, you know, you can get most of the gains at 10 sets, get a little bit more at 20, and then at some point over here, you start to see no more returns, and then eventually you start to see it start to drop off. I'm curious your thoughts on that graph in light of the new research, and if you think you can do it better, how you would.
So yeah, it's interesting because I would have drawn the graph very similarly to you until recently. There's data that is going to be out, probably kind of below the whole idea of volume, you know, where the upper limit of volume is out of the water. Based on some of the data I'm seeing, even if you go up to 20, 30 sets, you can get significantly more gains than with 10 sets.
So after speaking with James, I started thinking that perhaps the graph might look something more like this, and where that upper limit is, maybe we just don't know yet. So a few other interesting things I got from this call. While there have been some studies that have shown a plateau in gains, there hasn't been a single study that actually shows a loss in muscle mass from increasing volume. So any guesses on where that upper limit might be will be speculative and probably based on experience as much as the actual research. Also, all of these volume landmarks are very exercise specific. Some exercises will just be much more damaging and affect recovery much more than others. So for example, a set of heavy Romanian deadlifts may not count in the same way as a set of leg curls. So volume clearly isn't the only thing that matters, even though it is very important. And finally, just because we haven't necessarily found an upper limit in the research where volume becomes detrimental for hypertrophy, that isn't necessarily an across-the-board endorsement for trainees, especially beginners, to do as much volume as possible. My only hesitation in someone who's kind of presenting this science to the public is that you don't want people to misinterpret it and be like, I got to do as many sets as possible. Because
I know, exactly. And that's why I'm always adding all these caveats. I'm like, you know, you got to think about this and think about that, you know, because I get that concern too, that people are going to suddenly take this data and say, oh my God, we got to do 45 weekly sets per body part, you know, and stuff like that. And I just think the more important takeaway, I think for me at least, is if you're not gaining size and you've got room to bump your volume up, then that might be your the first thing to try.
And on our call, James talked about potential utility in running specialization phases, where you might jack the volume up to, say, 30 sets for one body part, while putting the rest at maintenance volume, so say 10 to 20 sets, and then cycling through different body parts. And you'd want to prioritize your weak points or areas that you're trying to improve the most. And I would say that this could be particularly useful in more highly advanced trainees. So I think that getting back to my graph, most things still hold. We do know that 10 sets per week is a lot better than doing less than that, and many trainees can get a good deal of gains at this volume, especially beginners. But what happens after this point here is difficult to say, and based on the current research, might be better left off with a bunch of question marks for now. And I do think that past the 20 sets mark, in practice, it will become a bit more of a balancing act, where yes, more volume may get you more results, but if you push it too far, an injury could set you back much further than the marginal gains would be worth to begin with. So like always, it's important.
That right there is super key.
Important to keep these general ballparks in mind and carefully monitor your own progress and your own recovery, adjusting volume up or down, depending on where you are and where you want to be. Okay, so guys, I hope that one was informative. Please leave me a like if you enjoyed the video, and just let me know if you like these interview snippets kind of integrated in.
So, all right, so that's a really good detailed kind of breakdown of looking at that training volume, right? So there could be going beyond like 20 sets per week per body part could be more effective, but like you said, it becomes a balancing act. Now you're worrying about working too hard with your client and potentially causing an injury, right? Which we are trying to avoid like the plague, you know? So that's when we're talking about training volume, we're talking about the sets and reps during the workout, but also look at your training volume across your week. Again, 10 to 20 sets. So if we think about like training volume, let's set up a bro split here. Okay. We're going to set up a really simple kind of bro split. So insert, 5 days here. We've got chest, back, shoulders, legs, and arms. Right. So now let's see, and now I'm going to insert a column to the left. So we've got exercise 1. Let's say we're going to go with kind of a bodybuilder approach here. Let's go 5 sets, which is obviously a lot. 5 by 6, but it's going to make my math easy, which is the key part here. So exercise 1, we're doing 5 sets of 6 reps, right? And we do that for all of these, right? So now, what have I done? I've gotten 5 sets for my chest. I've gotten 5 sets for my back, 5 sets for my shoulders, 5 sets for my legs, 5 sets for my arms, right? Pretty good. We need 10 to 20 though. So we got exercise 2. And maybe we just do the same thing, right? And then we got exercise 3, because we're trying to get to 20 sets, right? Let's say we'll get to the maximum, right? And now it's like, I'm going to do 5 sets here, but like, I've been lifting really heavy for 2 lifts. Why don't I raise the repetitions up just slightly? We'll go like 8 reps here. So 5 by 8, 5 by 8. I can copy and paste, so why wouldn't I do that? And then we'll go for exercise 4. And we'll do 5 sets of 10 here, which is going to be way too much. I do not like this workout, by the way. Okay, so now I had to do 4 exercises to get my total training volume, but look at how much work I'm doing every single workout here, right? I'm doing so many sets. By the end of it, my form is probably getting really sloppy. Also, like 5 sets of 10, if I do want to train like different energy systems, like this is really good for like high intensity, like close to maximal intensity lifting there. But it's like lifting that heavy, it's like I'm asking for trouble, right? Down here, I'm only training my heavy lifting energy system. What's nice about this, I'm getting more into glycolysis here, right? Where I really am getting a chance to kind of get a lot more like lactic acid buildup. But I mean, that's 50 total reps after doing all this. I mean, that's just a lot of work in one day, right? So that's kind of our classic sort of setup there that a lot of people are used to. Now, would this work? Yeah, I think it actually would, I think this wouldn't necessarily be the worst routine in the world. I think that this could be, very effective, right? And by the way, for arms, I would assume, like you got like your biceps and your triceps, which are literally opposites of one another. So, honestly, I would throw in if I were doing a routine like this, I'd probably do them as supersets, where I would do like sit and then like that. I would go the opposite way and just pair them up. So biceps and triceps. We'll say bis. Of course, that's too big now. So, okay. So we're gonna leave this alone for right now. We're gonna come back to it in just a little bit. That's our training volume as it is currently laid out. Now, go back to our acute variables here. So the next thing we're going to look at is our training frequency. Okay, so this is the number of sessions in a given time period. Generally, what experts agree is like, and this is where this gets a little bit confusing. The number of sessions in 1 week's time should be somewhere between 1 to 2 days per week if you are aiming for maintenance, and 3 to 5 days a week if you are looking for improvement. Now, what they mean by that might make you say, oh, I need 3 to 5 chest days per week. I need 3 to 5 leg days per week. Because until now, we've been talking about body parts, right? That is not what they mean here. What they mean is like, if you are trying to improve overall athleticism, you need to work out something 3 to 5 days per week. You want to maintain your athleticism, it really only takes like 1 to 2 days of working out a week. So if you're doing like, let's say total body workouts, 1 to 2 days per week can help you maintain. This is where we go back to that training volume that I mentioned at the very beginning of this module, where I was like, it's about 150 minutes per week in order to keep your cardiorespiratory system healthy, just healthy. Now, obviously, if you're trying to improve your cardiorespiratory system, you need more work than that. But this is like just for maintenance, it's like 1 to 2 days per week of working out, 3 to 5 days per week of working out, right? So typically when we're considering, we consider it in a 1 week period. Now, I put a big asterisk in here. Opinion warning, right? A lot of experts agree that the optimal training frequency for muscle growth and strength is hitting a muscle twice per week. So now if we get away from the overall athleticism conversation, we go back to body parts, right? This is where a lot of people agree that hitting a muscle twice per week will see increased growth. So like I said, your form's probably getting pretty sloppy by the end here. This is a lot of work for one body part at a time. And then you're giving yourself 7 days of rest before you come back. Now, if you're doing this much cellular damage, which by the way, there's a lot of cellular damage, right? Like I said, what is this? What's the total reps here? It's 30 plus 30, it's 60 plus another 40. So it's 100 plus another 50. It's 150 reps for the body part, right? 150 reps on the day up. 300 reps here technically, but 150 each. That's a lot. That's a lot of volume. And so you probably will need a lot of recovery. But you don't necessarily have to lay your training volume out like this. Like if we took this concept and we put it together, and let's say we put it together as sort of a push-pull routine, right? So we've got like our chest and shoulders and our back and legs, right? And then because we got our shoulders here, we'll add triceps, and with the legs, we will add biceps. So I can just do that. All right, we're just gonna have to deal with the fact that that's 2 lines. And then I just kind of copy that concept, right? And I do it twice per week, and I get a full day of rest in between. Just kind of nice, right? So now exercise 1 is maybe like our chest. And exercise 2 is for our chest, right? And then we go to shoulders. Right. All right. And then the same. Oh, whoops. Sorry. That actually doesn't make sense with the way I have this chart laid out. All right. This is our chest and shoulders example, right? this needs to go here. Whoops. There we go. So now, and then we need to add 2 more exercises to get our freaking triceps in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy these 2. These here and change that to triceps. So our workout got a little bit longer, right? We could also just throw an arm day in there in the middle if we wanted to do it that way. But there we go, right? Like now I've kind of got this like similar setup here, right? But I'm only doing half the training volume on one day. And then on my second chest, shoulder, and tricep day, I could just take this whole thing and kind of keep it the same. But now I just swap this out and this becomes shoulders. This becomes shoulders. This becomes chest. And that becomes chest. And triceps kind of stay the same over here. So not bad, right? Like it's the same training volume that we did up here. Like I didn't add anything new. I kept it the same, but I'm only doing 2 chest exercises on, you know, let's say Mondays and 2 chest exercises on Thursday. I'm only doing 2 exercises per workout, which means I'm probably not going to get sloppy with my form, right? Same thing is true here. If we look at like, this is our back and then this is our back, right? We got a heavy back day. And we got a like slightly lighter leg day in the beginning of the week. Right, and then copy this whole thing, put it down here, and then just change this to legs. Legs. Back and biceps. So do you guys see what we're doing here? Do we see how like we see this is the same training volume, right? If we count the total number of chest sets, right, it's 5, 10, 15, 20, just like we had all on one day here. Right. A lot of what's that, David?
Oh, nothing. I was just saying, so this is one of those cases where it's like you have to use, you have to use your head a little bit and be like, okay, well, you want to get these amount of reps, right? So how could we do it efficiently so we don't overwork our client and so their form stays good, right? So it's one of those instances where you want to work smarter, not harder, because the bro split, you're working hard, man. You're pushing some weight right there.
Yeah, 100%.
But that's not optimal, right? I wouldn't say that's optimal because you're pushing yourself so much, that like you're gonna, you're at a greater risk of injury because you're just pushing yourself, which is good to push yourself. Yes. But not to that extent, right?
But not to break down in form. I hurt my hamstring earlier this year. I tore my hamstring for the first time ever. Early this year playing Ultimate. It was on the last play of the day. And we were up by like so many points. I was like, I'm just not worried about losing this. But I still wanted to like make a play. And so like, I just wasn't, I was running around kind of sloppy. And then I tried to like break into a sprint, which requires focus, and felt it. He just heard this like, pop. And I was like, literally the last play of the day, like the last 5 seconds of the day. Wow. It's always at the end, it's always like when you think it's over, you start to get sloppy because you're like, I got this in the bag.
Yeah, I've already done so much, let me just get it over with.
Yeah, mentality. Get it over with. Yeah, that mentality will kill you as an athlete.
Yeah.
So this is kind of our setup here, right? Like this is. Now, is this better? Well, there's some research that suggests yes. So now you might be going, well, what about 3 times per week? What if I did total body? I did like, and did, what about maybe even 5 times per week? Jeff Nippard came out with this 5-day-a-week super high frequency program. It's fine. Here's the thing. We generally think that 2 times a week is best. Now, because our body doesn't need a full week of recovery. Now that argument could disappear when you look at this version where it's like, I did like 150 reps for my chest today. I need a week to recover, but that maybe that's true, but maybe not as well. So I got another video to show you. These are my two favorite YouTubers, by the way, in terms of like fitness stuff. Jeff Nipper does really good physiologic breakdowns. And then the other one that I like is Jeremy Ethier does a really good breakdown of this as well. This is one of his slightly earlier videos, but I really like this guy as well.
This is Canyon Ranch.
He's like a
Here,
young,
the body is challenged. The
got really in good shape, and it's always kind of fun to hear that story. But here we go.
One of the most hotly debated topics within the fitness industry is training frequency. More specifically, how often you should train each muscle group per week. On one end of the spectrum, you have those who advocate a training frequency of just one time per week, whereas others favor a higher frequency approach. For example, a 2013 survey of 127 competitive bodybuilders found that 69% of respondents trained each muscle group once per week, while the remaining 31% train muscles twice or more weekly. So while it's evident that you will see results regardless of what training frequency you use, the question now though is what's optimal. And to figure that out, we need to look at the research. Luckily, researcher Brad Schoenfeld recently published a 2016 meta-analysis on this exact topic. They collected 10 different studies and compared training each muscle one time per week versus training each muscle with higher frequencies of 2 or 3 times per week, and analyzed the effect it had on muscle growth. The result, as shown here, every single study showed a benefit to training with higher frequencies. In fact, training each muscle 2 or 3 times per week resulted in 3.1% greater muscle growth than training each muscle just once per week. And since total workout volume, exercises, and rest times were equated for all the studies included in this analysis, it's very likely that the difference in training frequency is indeed what caused that extra 3.1% muscle growth. Which, just to put this 3.1% number in perspective, could result in roughly an extra pound of muscle gain for a beginner after their first year of training, which may not sound like a lot, but definitely would be a noticeable difference. So based on this, we know at the very least that training each muscle a minimum of 2 days a week is needed to maximize muscle growth. As for whether or not frequencies higher than this would be beneficial, it's relatively unclear at the moment. However, it does seem as if more may not be better. For example, this recent 2017 paper compared training each muscle 2 days per week versus 4 days per week, with weekly volume being equated between groups. The researchers found that after just 6 weeks, the 2 times per week training frequency group experienced greater upper body gains than the 4 times per week group, therefore indicating that sticking to training each muscle group around 2 times per week is probably your best bet. Now, as for the reasoning behind this, it likely has to do with something called muscle protein synthesis, which is essentially the process your muscle goes through after a workout in order to build additional muscle mass. And based on the literature, we know that after a resistance training workout, protein synthesis remains elevated for roughly 36 to 48 hours in most individuals. So if you were to train each muscle group just one time per week, you can see how you wouldn't be optimizing the protein synthesis response by not stimulating the growth process as frequently as you could be throughout the week. Whereas if you were to train each muscle group too frequently, you would be interfering with the recovery process. So by sticking to training each muscle group 2 to 3 times per week, for example, you're able to maximize the protein synthesis response throughout the week while avoiding any interference with recovery, given that your volume per session is not excessive. But even with this theory, and as with many things within this field, there are also a lot of unknowns that research is yet to iron out. For instance, this very recent 2018 study by Gentle and colleagues actually found that when trained subjects who were previously using a 2 times per week muscle training frequency for at least 4 months switched over to a 1 time per week bro split protocol, they actually saw significantly greater muscle growth over 10 weeks when compared to another group that simply stayed with the 2 times per week muscle training frequency throughout the study. Now,
so that's kind of fun as well, right? Like sometimes you might be going, oh, well, I should only do the 2 times a week thing, but look at here. It's like a bro split can be a great way to change it up. I'm thinking about doing one in March, just because I'll be at the end of like a big long cycle and stuff. at that point. It might be a good, it might be a good plateau buster for me. So go back to the bro split. Maybe it is better. You know, this is what research is like. It's a lot of like, maybe.
To be honest, this wasn't the best designed study and is yet to be replicated, but nonetheless, it does provide the notion that for well-trained lifters at least, switching it up every now and then might provide a beneficial response and is something to keep in mind and possibly experiment with. However, for most of you, I think it's best to stick with the following recommendations since they're based on a solid amount of research. We know that training a muscle group 2 to 3 times per week is superior to 1 time per week. And we know that training at frequencies greater than this doesn't seem to provide an added benefit unless you're aiming to improve a specific lift, for example. Therefore, for the majority, you'd ideally want to use a workout split that accomplishes a 2 or 3 times per week training frequency while enabling you to get in the adequate volume of 10 plus weekly sets per muscle group, as discussed in my interview with researcher Brad Schoenfeld. And you can do so with a variety of workout splits, but here's a 3-day, 4-day, 5-day, and 6-day split that are all good options to do so. But with all of that being said, it's total weekly volume and adherence to your routine that are the more important factors when it comes to long-term progress. So if you find that a 1 time per week training split or something other than what was discussed is more enjoyable for you and is something you'll be more consistent with, then that's what I'd stick with. But overall, for the majority, sticking to the recommendations outlined earlier would likely be the best approach. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed.
Alrighty. So, all right, let's go ahead and wrap up the PowerPoint here, and then we're going to dive into some of our acute variables and stuff. So next thing is duration. Now, duration, I hate this. It has 2 meanings. I hate 2 meanings. Duration can either be the duration of your workout. Generally, that's 60 to 90 minutes, including, excluding warm up and cool down. Or it can be how long you are in a training phase, which all the examples I'm going to use today are kind of classic 4-week examples, but generally 4 to 6, maybe 4 to 8 weeks is what is recommended in terms of like how often you should switch things up. So maybe you go from a twice a week to a 4-day, to a once a week program, like between a bro split and a 2-day split. Maybe you do that thing, that's fine. If you're hopping back and forth, you should change it up every 4 to 6 weeks or so. Now, our last acute variable is exercise selection. That means, are you choosing stabilization exercises, strength exercises, and power exercises? You got to consider that as well. And then generally, you might have noticed if you look on those exercise checklists, it has total body movements, chest, back, shoulders, biceps, triceps, and legs, until you get to power, and biceps and triceps are missing. And that's because when you're choosing stabilization movements, you can do total body, like a step up to balance with curl to overhead press, right? That's biceps, shoulders, and triceps, and freaking legs all together. You can do multi-joint, which would be like a chest press, right? That's shoulders and elbows, even a little bit of wrist there. Or you can do single joint. Yeah, you can do bicep curls. Strength, same thing, total body, multi-joint, or single joint. Power, we only do total body or multi-joint exercises. That's it. There are no arm power exercises, because how silly does this look? Like, doesn't exactly make much sense. I don't know any athlete, I don't know any sport that needs me to be able to do that really fast. Except for maybe like that world championship of like face slapping. Have you guys seen that? Oh, it's a video on YouTube. Have you seen that?
It's brutal.
Horrifying, right? Those guys are so big. I was like, it would kill me. I would die. Like,
they have weight divisions, no? I mean, they would have to, I'd assume, right?
I hope so.
You can't just pick them.
It's wild. All right. So next thing is we got to talk about like periodization as like an overall cycle. So what I've got here, we've got 3 different versions of this, right? sorry, it should be up here. We got 3 different versions of periodization, right? So periodization is dividing your training program into phases of training. Really great article. I'll put it in the chat bubble here. A year of this article right here did a really good job where they were planning a full year of training and nutrition. They kind of put the 2 concepts together, which I think that was kind of fun. And this is very much all about hypertrophy. This is a bodybuilder's thing, you know? So let's say, there's a bodybuilding competition coming up in, let's say, July, right? Let's say it's at the middle of the year, right? July is going to be like, they want to be competition ready, right? So that's the end of this year-long cycle. They're like, I've given myself a year to train for it, right? Okay, cool. So if that's the case, then you're going to set up for that July as like the end of month 12. You know, that's the end of the phase there, right? Let's use a little bit of an easier example. Let's say January. And I don't think there's as many bodybuilding competitions in January because it's not like summertime, but like, let's say January 1st, somebody's going to do a bodybuilding competition. They got a New Year's resolution, January 1st, 2022. They're like, all right, I'm going to take a year and I'm going to do a bodybuilding competition in 2022. And I'm going to focus on it all year. And then 2023 is going to roll around and I'm going to do my bodybuilding competition, right? So let's set this up. If we look at NASM's annual plan model here, this is how you can set that up as like a cycle. So you can see the first month is all about just like, let's get big, right? So they are starting in hypertrophy January 1st, right? And they're staying in it for 4 months, 2, 3, 4, right? And they're eating like crazy. This is a building phase and trying to get big. Then they're going to have a strength phase in month 5, right? Boom, get into strength a little bit. Then they're going to break down and get into some fat loss here for 4 months. So we're going to go with strength endurance there because that's very good for fat loss. And then they're going to go back into hypertrophy. And then at the end, they're going to have strength and they have to get their maintenance phase where they're just trying to cement all that strength at the end of their year, right? Then January, right there, they're probably doing a little bit of a cut again to get ready for that competition, depending on how many weeks out it is, right? Now, do I love this? Not necessarily. No stabilization, which is, in my opinion, asking for an injury. Now, arguably, you could do a little bit of this, right? You could go maybe, because stabilization is very good for fat loss too. And honestly, like you can actually use stabilization in a hypertrophic way as well. Like if I was to go like this, I actually don't think that would work very poorly either. There's a little bit more of a NASM approach to what we see here. But I like this article because I think it's a really cool, it's a very dieted breakdown of sort of how that's going to work. And they also, I think they have the training volume thing. Yeah. Oh no, that's the reverse dieting. But I thought they had like a chart in here talking about, or maybe they do it. They got a video that goes with this. Anyway, I'll copy this. If you guys want to read this article, it's a good one. There's a link right there. So this is sort of the NASM style, right? Because I would do probably 12 repetitions, which is still hypertrophy. Just I'd be picking stabilization versions and then go straight into the hypertrophy, like heavy lifting, right? Really heavy lifting. So, and you'll notice I didn't do any power. Like no phase 5 for the bodybuilders. Honestly, power, guys, it's just not good for muscle growth. It's just there's not enough time under tension per repetition to build up lactic acid the way we need it to. Plyometrics are just, bodybuilders do not do plyometrics. So that is sort of so this is an example of a year, right? This is a year-long cycle here. So there's 2 ways to lay this out, right? Now, what I did here was a very linear approach, right? This is all moving in like a straight line per month, right? Stabilization, then continue through a straight line. You know, if you were to look at the week, it'd be like stabilization. Right? If we did that 2-day split thing, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. right? Looks something kind of like that. It's not bad, you know. But what if I wanted to like train for multiple things simultaneously? What if like I really do want to have some more hypertrophy in here, right? Well, I can actually mark 2 phases simultaneously. What if it looks something like this? I've got a high volume day in the beginning of the week that's like very hypertrophy based, and then a low intensity day at the end of the week. And so my Monday, Tuesday is heavy, and my Thursday, Friday is light. Well, now I'm getting kind of a blend of training. I'm training different energy systems. I'm getting some real variety in here, but I'm kind of making a wave every week. It's sort of undulating, right? So there's sort of a difference between the way we do periodization here. There's linear, which is just a straight line, and then there's undulating. We'll look at it in just a second, but 3 definitions I do need you guys to have memorized. I just showed you an annual plan. This is a full year, 12 months, right? That's a macro cycle. Macro means large, right? It's the overall training plan for an entire year where you go through several different phases of training each month. Monthly plans, that's a mesocycle. It's like, well, what am I doing this month, right? Weekly plans, that's your microcycle. Workout A on Monday, workout B on Wednesday, workout C on Friday, if you're doing that approach, you know, that'd be like a 3-day split. Could do a 4-day split, could do whatever, right? That is our macro cycle approach, right? So we're thinking, you know, when we're considering these, we're considering what phases promote which adaptations, right? Like I said, stabilization and strength endurance are both really good for fat loss. Hypertrophy and max strength are really good for muscle growth. Max strength and power are really good for athleticism. And then there's specific athleticism, which is phase 6. Remember, that's the PES stuff. That's like sports specific training. That's also really good for athleticism. So 4, 5, 6 would be key for an athlete there. So we're going to start with corrective exercise. We always want to build a foundation of that with our clients. Then we move into strength endurance, right, where we focus a little bit more on like lifting a little bit heavier for strength. And then eventually we work our way into hypertrophy, followed by max strength, and then power. And then if we do have an athlete, maximal power, which is sports specific power there. So that's sort of what we're seeing there. So let's look at this example here that I've got, right? So here's a macro cycle. If I'm trying to build a general athlete who's very stable, has a lot of endurance, and is very explosive and powerful, probably like a soccer athlete, maybe a basketball athlete, I would train in stabilization in January, work on their endurance in February, and then get really explosive in March. And I would just repeat that all year, right? I would literally just take this year-long cycle here and be like, 1, 2, 5, 1, 2, 5, 1, 2, 5, 1, 2, 5. Right? Cool. Now, if I want to change it up every 8 weeks, could I also just do this? Yeah, absolutely. 1, 1, 2, 2, 5, 5. That works as well. But those are the 3 phases I've picked for this particular type of athlete. Now, like I said, that is linear periodization. It goes in a straight line through the month, right? So if we see like January is in stabilization, February is in strength endurance, March is in power, well, then I'm just boom, boom. You know, I'm here. I'm going in a straight line right across, right? The next month, you know, I would be going in a straight line here. The next month I'd be going in a straight line here, right? So that's a linear approach. It's not bad, right? Here's an example of what that mesocycle would look like for the week, right? In January, I'm doing stabilization. So on Monday, I do workout A. Then I do a little bit of stage 1 cardio. Wednesday, I do workout B. I continue with stage 1 cardio because they're in stabilization. Friday, I go back to A. So I've got a 2-day training split here, right? Workout A is stabilization. Workout B is also stabilization. This is a linear straight line. So I don't have any, like I'm staying in stabilization for the entire month of January. But what if I wanted to what if I'm mid-season with my athlete, right? I'm training with an athlete. I want them to maintain their corrective exercise. They don't get hurt. I also want them to maintain their strength and their endurance and their power. I need them to keep all those things through the whole season. Well, that's where undulating periodization comes in really handy. So let's say I've got an athlete. Let's say I've got Hey, does anybody know what soccer season is? What months soccer takes place? September through November. Is that it? That's so short. That can't be right.
Seems like all year to me.
It feels like you're right.
Yeah, right? Because there's like all the different cups and all that. All right, we're gonna say August through December. we're gonna make up our own season here. All right, so we train 1, 2, 5. 1, 2, 5. 1, and then here's August, right? There's September, there's October, there's November, and there's December, right? So now I did my linear periodization for January, linear for February, linear for March, April, May, June, and July. Then I'm going to do a wave in August. So let's assume this is August. And I'm going to train 3 days a week strength training, where I've got Monday is stabilization. Start the beginning of the week by working out any of the kinks, anything that's injured, right? Wednesday, I'm going to do my strength endurance routine. And then Friday, I will do a power routine. So now in my microcycles, it looks like this, right? My mesocycle is like A, B, and C. A is stabilization, B is strength endurance, C is power. And then cardio days, I've got a stage 1 cardio day on Tuesdays, a stage 2 cardio day on Thursday, and a stage 3 cardio day on Saturday. That's going to ensure that I've got some maximal, it's easy in the beginning of the week, and it builds, right? And then, at some point I'm going to have a game in there where it's going to screw up my whole, cycle here. This is actually assuming I don't have any games built into this week here. But in reality, it's it wouldn't be the same every Monday. It would probably just shift your whole routine down the line, which is where, again, cycling becomes really important. And laying this out, what's, I'm sure the schedule is released ahead of time, if someone's we got a game on, where this Wednesday would be, it's we would be gentle around that game so that they're full, we don't make them sore before the game. And then we would just reset our cycle afterwards. And so everything would kind of shift a little bit. Does that make sense, guys? The difference between linear and undulating periodization. Undulating means to have undulating is to wave, right? It's an undulation is a wave. An earthquake is the ground is undulating. So undulating periodization is using multiple phases of training within a 1 week period there, or maybe 2 week period. Does that make sense to everybody?
Could you run that back one more time?
Yeah. So linear is a line. It's a straight line. If you're doing hypertrophy for the month,
right? That's
a straight line. You're going, it's hypertrophy, right? Every workout. Right. Undulating is a wave. So you're waving up and down the OPT model. It's you start with stabilization, and then you're going to drop down to strength endurance, and you're going to go over to power, and then you're going to go back, and you're creating these waves.
Okay, so like a tornado, right? So one day I'm here, one day I'm over there, then the other day I'm over here, then I'm back there. Okay.
Yep. Which is probably what you're used to. If you've ever done group exercise, or if you've ever played sports, you guys have probably done days where it's all right, guys, we got a gentle workout today, and your coach is taking it easy. And then it's next time you see him, it's all right, I'm here to kill you today. Oh God, right? You're going up and down.
So one day will be dedicated to footwork, then the next day it's sparring, right. Like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sure. That's a good way to think of it too. Yeah. We're used to being on emotional roller coasters. This is a workout roller coaster. So, any other questions on that part? I do want to dive into the big chart today. Any questions on that? You guys feel good?
Pretty good.
Okay, I'll take it. All right, let's look at the big chart. Okay, so everybody's seen this. except for Joseph and Edwin. This is your first time. I mean, you've seen it, but here's the big chart. So what the big chart is, or as I like to call it, the big ass chart, is it is all of our rules, all of them laid out, right? So remember I said there's all those tables that you'll find in either chapter 14 of your regular book, chapter 12 of the sports book. So here's all the stabilization, acute variables, right? So there's the stabilization table. Look at all these rules here, all the reps, all the sets, all the tempos, right? And then the resistance stuff, right? Then over here, there's the strength endurance rules. So there's a table. And then we got the hypertrophy rules. Well, that's max strength rules, but there's hypertrophy. Oh, good. It's better. Yeah. Anyway, you get it. There's 5 of these tables. I don't need to pull them up individually because I got them all right here. So this is all of it compiled onto one document. Guys, I really recommend you make your own. Go get some paper, get a ruler, line it out, turn it sideways, and just write all these rules out so that you can reference this as often as possible. You can also print it. Obviously, I put it on here in case you ever want to print it. It's a very clean version, but the people who like make their own and practice this consistently tell me that they did better on their test because it was just easy to remember all these numbers, because this is a lot of memorization. This is an alphabet to use, right? So if we look at this, we look at all these rules here. If we see here, we look at flexibility, right? We could look at cardio. We look at core balance and reactive. That's the movement prep section of the workout. We got the SAQ section and the resistance, right? So when we look at the OPT template, this stuff here, warm up, which is, cardio and flexibility, core balance reactive, that's movement prep, SAQ, and then resistance section. So we've got that here, right? There's the warm up, there's the movement prep, there's the SAQ, there's the resistance. This should be warm up actually / cool down. Oh, it does fit. So there's warm up and cool down stuff. I really should change the chart and have it say that. But so there's every rule that we've got for stabilization clients, strength endurance clients, hypertrophy clients, max strength, and power there. So let's take a look at some examples here. That's the right one. Yeah. So here's an annual plan that I've got. Here's an example annual plan. And this is for an athlete, right, who is trying to do like some specific things, right? So it's a pretty complicated monthly plan, but if you look at it, right, we've got sort of the annual approach here. He's going to go from stabilization into strength endurance, and then he's going to do undulating in every March. It's like, I want to work on power with this client, but like, this is showing, it's like, all right, I don't want to only do power. They get one power workout, per week. And that way it doesn't really go too intense on him, right? So in January, he's doing stabilization, right? So here's our 3-day split in January, right? On workout A is chest, shoulders, and triceps. Workout B is legs. Workout C is back and biceps, right? So there's a little bit of like total body work that's happening here. So January, and then on his cardio, right? Tuesdays, he's doing stage 1. Thursdays, he's doing stage 1. Saturdays, doing stage 1, right? So there's this is the January approach on this side over here, right? And then in February, he moves into strength endurance. And so now maybe I do the 2-day split where he's working, each body part twice per week. So workout A is chest, shoulders, and triceps. Workout B is back, biceps, and legs. And then he repeats workout A again on Thursday, and he repeats workout B again on Friday. Boop, boop, boop. All that there, right? Then in March, he's doing undulating, where he's got workout A, which has to be total body now. And undulating routines have to be total body, because otherwise you'd be training legs for stabilization, back for strength, and shoulders for power. You know, like that doesn't make any sense. So you need to do total body routines here, which we can see, right? So his Monday is total body, his Wednesday is total body, his Friday is total body. And so this is a stabilization workout, this is a strength workout, strength endurance, and this is a power workout. And he's got stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3 for his cardio on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So here we go with our monthly plan here for January. It looks like this if I lay it out. I don't have phase 2, 3, or 4. I'm not using those. I'm only staying in phase 1, right? Monday, he's got workout A. He does stage 1 cardio. Wednesday, stage 1 cardio. Friday, stage 1 cardio. And then it's the same thing every week, right? There's week 2, there's week 3, there's week 4. Here's our monthly plan for February. We're in phase 2 the whole month, right? We just literally keep it in phase 2. But now it's like workout A, workout B, cardio, A, B, cardio, rest. And repeat the next week. Piece of cake, 4 weeks. Then month 3, oh, what happened? Why did this get cleared? Why is this empty? All right, well, it's very easy to plug in. So, it's annoying. So for month 3, the undulating, right? We got workout A, B, and C. So that would be Monday is workout A, which is stabilization. Tuesday is going to be stage 1 cardio. Wednesday is workout B, which is strength endurance. Thursday is stage 2 cardio. And then Friday is phase 5, workout C, and Saturday is stage 3 cardio. And then I can just cut, and then Sunday is rest. And I'll just copy this. Paste it here, here, and here. And save it this time. So that's an undulating routine. This is how I like to lay stuff out for my clients. Love to send them stuff like this because it's just very clear, very easy. Now, let's cover those rules really quick because we have been talking about them, you know, for this whole course, right? I will cover all of these numbers specifically tomorrow in our final lecture before we meet up. But just to give you a really brief overview of this, right? So when I say I'm doing corrective flexibility, I'm picking SMR and static stretches. So this is that first month. I follow only these rules. I don't even pay attention to any of this stuff. So 1 to 3 sets, 30 seconds hold each rep because static stretches in SMR are very static. I can hold them, right? I do stage 1 cardio. Stage 1, it's only zone 1, piece of cake, 65 to 75% heart rate max. Then I do core stabilization, balance stabilization, and plyometric stabilization exercises for around 1 to 3 sets for most of these. I hate the fact that this is 1 to 4 because it doesn't sync up with these two, but it's like, maybe we need a little bit extra core work, you know? Relatively high reps, 12 to 20 here, except for here, you notice the reps drop down to 5 to 8 because we're being a little gentle. It's a new client, right? We don't want to do too many plyometrics. Slow tempos for everything. 0 to 90 seconds of rest for everything. SAQ stuff, we're limiting horizontal inertia. We're limiting unpredictability. We're really primarily focusing on speed drills here, right? And then for the resistance stuff, 1 to 3 sets of about 12 to 20 repetitions at a slow tempo for 50 to 70% 1 rep max, and then up to 90 seconds of rest. So these are all the rules that I follow for my client in that first month of training. So if I look at my examples here, and I look at an example stabilization routine, I know this one looks slightly different. This is the on the website one. So here's a client for stabilization endurance to start in January 1st, right? So I do SMR and static stretches. I do a little bit of core stabilization, a little bit of balance stabilization, a little bit of reactive stabilization. I probably do a speed ladder drill here. Right? And I look at my rules and I pick 1 to 2 sets of 2 to 3 reps at a moderate tempo. So let's go with 2 sets. Let's go with 3 reps each, right? Medium tempo. Can I fit the word moderate here? I'm gonna write medium instead of moderate. And take 60 seconds of rest. Okay, so, and then I get into all these stabilization movements. All right, so then next month, I move my client into strength endurance. So I'm gonna follow all these rules. Now you'll notice that like I have it split over here, strength endurance, there's hypertrophy, right? There's max. Oh, I just realized I should color coordinate this a little darker. That would make this even more clear. Boop. Hey, I like that. I'm always finding new ways to like make this cleaner and more clear. So there's my hypertrophy stuff. Now you'll notice that like there is no flexibility approach specific to hypertrophy or max strength or cardio or core. All of the movement prep stuff, all the SAQ stuff is the same. The only thing that changes is the resistance section for the phases. That's why there's a difference between levels and phases. The flexibility, cardio, core, balance, reactive, and SAQ stuff is the same for all of the strength phases, all 3 of them. But the phases are distinct when it comes to resistance training. When it comes to chest, shoulders, back, biceps, triceps, and leg stuff, that's where you've got to get specific here. But again, active flexibility, stage 2 cardio, core strength, balance strength, reactive strength, and a little bit of speed plus agility. So if you look at these workouts here, if we look at the strength, endurance, hypertrophy, and max strength examples, oh, that's put in the wrong order. They're really similar, right? Notice how like, honestly, like look at, if I flip, they're all zoomed in at different levels. That's nice. That's so annoying. All right, so if we look here, oh, they're not, that's so annoying. Why are you not? Where's the zoom feature? All right, I can't get this to sync up. I apologize. But look, do you guys notice I'm flipping back and forth between the tabs here? This stuff down here is changing, but the stuff up above is not. And that's because I literally kept it the same warm up, the same movement prep, and the same SAQ, which is blank here, for all 3 months there. But then I changed the resistance section. Here, I've got the strength endurance approach. Here, I've got the hypertrophy approach. Here, I've got the max strength approach. So one thing to remember, if you look at strength endurance here, let's go to exercise selection on the big chart here. Look at exercise selection. You'll notice I've got some blue stuff in here, right? Which is stabilization. So what gives? Well, remember, we do recover in zone 1 when we're doing stage 2 cardio. We do still do speed movements. We just allow for more horizontal inertia. So we allow for agility when we're doing SAQ. Well, in strength endurance, one of the ways that you build endurance is by supersetting the same body part. You do a strength movement first, you do a stabilization movement second. So if I did 2 to 4 sets of 8 to 12 reps, I would do 8 to 12 reps of a strength movement and then 8 to 12 reps of a stabilization movement. And I would do my tempo, strength plus stabilization. So let's say I'm doing like really heavy barbell squats, right? And I'm like knocking those out. I do my 8 to 12. I rack it immediately without resting. I'm going to do, let's say, like a Bulgarian split squat, like my leg elevated up. It's really unstable. I'm balancing for another 8 to 12 repetitions. So I did my strength movement, then I did my stabilization movement. I paired them up. I don't have to do that in hypertrophy. I don't have to do that in max strength. That's just how I'm going to build endurance. That's why I told you it was 16 to 24 reps in reality. My favorite, by the way, I actually don't often even use the 12 reps. I often just try to keep it somewhere between 8 and 10. And honestly, I try to keep it close to 8 as often as possible. Finally, I've got a client who's going to go into the power level / power phase, right? And you'll notice I've got some green and some blue here, right? Again, they're doing functional flexibility, but they're doing stage 3 cardio, which has got zone 3, zone 2, and zone 1 for recovery. Core power, balance power, reactive power. And now maximal unpredictability and maximal horizontal inertia. So I can still do speed. I can still do agility, but now I'm incorporating quickness drills, unpredictable stuff. And then here, I'm also going to do the superset technique. I'm going to pair a strength movement with a power movement. So a barbell squat, but instead of doing a Bulgarian split squat, which is unstable, now I'm going to do a barbell squat, and I'm going to pair it with a squat jump, which is explosive. And that is sort of our first dive into the big chart. Tomorrow, we're doing injury with the final chapter here in the sports class, where we're going to cover injury prevention. We're going to talk a lot about like corrective exercise and stabilization stuff. But it's only one chapter that goes, it's really short. It just goes very fast. So because of how fast it goes, we're going to do all of our acute variables tomorrow. And that way you guys can start getting even more familiar with those reps. And that's about it, guys. Oh, what's up, David?
Oh, I just said sounds good.
Love that. All right. Cool. Any questions? Joseph, Dion, Thomas, Edwin, you guys feeling good?
Just trying to absorb it and
it's
no questions.
It's an art form for sure. Thomas, how you feel? You got one lecture left with me. We're meeting up on Wednesday. You got one actual lecture left. How you feeling? Feeling confident?
Yeah, I'm feeling fine. It's just more familiarization that I still need to do, but I'm feeling more confident as time goes on.
Flashcards, you know.
Right, flashcards, right.
You're heading to Motown in the new year.
Right.
All right, guys. Well, and Joseph, it is a lot, but you see it, you see it more. Every single module, we're gonna revisit this stuff. So,
and getting into practicing, I think, will make it easier.
That is true as well. I do recommend take yourself through a stabilization routine, take yourself through a strength endurance routine. I actually don't think that's the best thing to go like phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of like building an overall athlete. It's actually not my favorite approach because it's too general. It's just trying to do too many things. It's the jack of all trades, but the master of none. But it's a great way to learn the OPT model. So you can experience them all. So. All right, I'll kill the recording.